I'm Bob Neubauer, editor of In-Plant Graphics magazine, and I'm happy to see all of you here. So I'm going to not talk too long here and turn it right over to Tim Kelly, who's Senior Vice President of Rochester Software Associates, and he's going to say a few words and then introduce our main speaker today.
Hello, good afternoon. As Bob said, I'm Tim Kelly with RSA. RSA has been in the business of providing workflow software since 1986. I know many of you are customers. You may know us from our original start when we did transform legacy data streams like LCDS and IPDS to PostScript. Then we moved into output management with our QDirect product, and then WebCRD almost 15 years ago when we got into web to print. We're headquartered in Rochester, New York, which is very convenient for a number of the printers. And we focus on implants. It's one reason why we spend time with this group. That's our focus rather than the commercial print for pay market. And we also partner with all of the major print manufacturers. So when people purchase our solution, they're generally purchasing it from a print manufacturer, not direct from RSA. So our workflow concepts, solutions enable you to do everything from submit jobs, from desktops, from mainframes, from just about any source, collect those, manage those jobs, direct them to the appropriate printers, or even convert those to PDF for viewing. And then we drive all the printers in the production print space. So one of the unique value propositions that RSA offers is that all of our products are driven by our universal print capability, regardless of which manufacturer you have, which print controller you have. RSA is able to drive those printers seamlessly. But it's my pleasure to introduce our key speaker today. Tom Rohrbach is IT systems engineer consultant at Progressive Insurance. Thanks, Tom.
I'm really here, for the most part, to tell you a story about what Progressive has done in the last, I'd say, 6 to 7 years to make their implant viable and to determine whether or not we should continue the implant, continue to invest in it, or do we outsource the work? We're doing a very careful study on all of that, because once you have to realize we work for Progressive Insurance Company. That's why we're here. So we need to make sure we're doing the right thing for Progressive as an organization and providing them the competitive advantage that we would like to be able to do. What we're going to talk about today is a number of things. We're going to talk about the Progressive Our implant, how we're organized, an analysis we did that how the analysis is, what the impact looks like as we're looking through the various pieces, what the key learnings are as we've gone through this process, what's next, and what our future considerations are. And also, if there's any questions along the way, be happy to answer those as we go through the presentation. About Progressive itself, obviously we're an insurance company. I think you all probably are familiar with Flow. We have 25,000 employees, 450 offices. We are headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. We have an A+ AM Best rating, the #1 insurance website in the 2013 by the Keynote Competitive Research Bureau. Implant statistics, who are we, what do we do? We have 2 locations. We have 68 employees in the transactional organization and about 51 in the creative organization. It's almost evenly split. We do 115 million of pieces a year. Our annual budget's about $74 million. The majority of that, I'd say about 40 to 45 million is postage. The rest is everything else, the equipment, the people, and all the technology that's wrapped around that. The combined operational budget is $25.7 million. Out of all the impressions that we do, the majority of them, about 85%, 86% is transactional, and the remainder is non-transactional, the creative work. What we did about, I think it was about 4 years ago, the creative organization used to be part of corporate, while the transactional organization was part of IT. We combined those together. put everything under IT, and it's worked real well since then. And this is kind of the story of once we started to look at that, are we sure we're doing the right things for the right reasons for Progressive? The way we're organized, this creative business operation is what the team has evolved to be called. It's basically all the way from design through shipping. We work very closely with the marketing organization. In the old organization, the graphics people and the marketing people, or the design people, were combined together. We split the design people off to the marketing organization, so they have a direct line to the chief marketing officer. We have print shop, promotional mail, warehousing, a copy center. We have offset presses, we have home jets, we have envelope presses, we have letter presses. We have iGen 150, the high-speed digital copier. And on the transactional side, a combination of continuous print and high-speed and high-intelligence mail insertion equipment. The way the transactional flow works at a very high level is basically our business applications feed us all from all of our systems. There's policy maintenance, policy billing, endorsements, everything that goes into an insurance transaction. They come down through our software systems. We do postal preparation. We combine all of our mailings on the transaction side are recipient-based, so it goes to the one recipient. And we have everything is automated with inserter control files. It's all file-based processing. We bring that into our systems. We have to do conversion and workflow transformations. We use RSA to convert our metacode to PostScript to print on the Xerox printers. We have, and they're the various operation GUIs. RSA QDirect is our operation GUI. We go through that, through the print, insert, finish, and postal preparation, all the way, and then it feeds into our transactional model, which is continuous cut sheet, intelligent file inserting. We do a final update for the final manifest. Everything is fully manifested. And then we have the USPS pickup. On the non-transactional side, it gets a little more complex. And believe me, I did not have an appreciation for the complexity of this side of the house, coming from IT myself, until I started to learn it about 5 years ago. And it's really where most of the stuff is happening now. We get feeds for work from everybody from marketing, agents, claims, training, and Progressive employees. We bring in the stuff. Basically, the creative design people have the ideas. And they say, okay, here's what I want to get out to the customers. It gets into our graphics area. It's a production control piece. We figure out how we can mass produce it and get it out to the final customer. We go through pre-press, preset a drawer, addressing, cleansing, color monochrome and variable printing, barcoding, resource management. Conversion workflow, everything from plate making to digital conversion. Once again, you've got the operator GUIs in there, and the shop floor itself. We have an entire shop floor management system, which we're going to talk about. We needed, in order to do the analysis that we've done, we had to get very good data on what was going on in our shop. Yeah, a lot of people knew a little bit about this, a little bit about that. You had your subject matter experts at the various machines, but the data had to tell the story. Progressive is very big on data. We need to have data tell the story. It adds viability and validity to what we're talking about. Once again, we go through the print bindery finishing. I don't need to list all the stuff we have there again. We put it together, we warehouse it, or we ship it. What started this whole study, basically? It was a deep dive, actually. It came down to content and cost management. First of all, were we being cost effective for Progressive? Did we know the answer to that question? We weren't sure. We had to dig into our data to see what it told us. Content ownership has become a real question at Progressive. We're in a situation now where we have external vendors doing our scrubbing our data, figuring out how to selectively message out to our insureds and to our demand marketing campaigns. One of the big concerns there is I would like to be in a position at Progressive where all we supply to our external vendor providers is a completed print file. I don't want them to be owning the manipulation of our data. I think we lose our ability to be vendor agnostic when we get to that point. That's my own perception. That's how I feel about how Progressive wants to run that. So we need to take that content ownership back. We have the tools in-house to do that. We need to get better at using them. And also we realize that we're spending approximately $60 million a year outside. We're writing a check for that every year for our external print and packaging and different campaigns. Granted, a majority of that is postage, but there's still a good chunk of that. We are paying for people's expertise. In some cases, it makes perfect sense. But in other cases, it makes more sense to possibly bring this stuff in-house and determine whether we can do it in-house and keep it in-house if it's going to be there long enough for it to make sense. Given that challenge, we came up with it essentially as a 7-step process. I'm going to take you through this. We had to define what the insourcing opportunity was, all the stuff we're shipping out. Can we bring it in? Does our current equipment allow us to bring it in, or do we need to add something to our current fleet of equipment in order to bring stuff in? Does it make sense for Progressive to do that? Establish the project mission. Why are we doing this? We'll talk about that. What's the approach? Really, the approach, I think, is the key to this presentation, and this is an approach that worked for Progressive. It may not work for everybody here, but maybe bits and pieces of it will. If something works for you and something doesn't, that's fine. Hopefully you can get something out of this that might help you with these decisions. So I've got to believe, like in most cases, that implants face a constant challenge. In our case, you have to constantly prove that your existence is worthwhile. And what we offer speed to market. We offer cost-competitive pricing. We have to continue to provide the business with the leverage to make us the best that we can be. In order to do that, you've got to understand what you currently do. What's your current state? Analyze what do we keep in, what do we ship out, why? Why do we keep it in, why do we ship it out? Project customer needs and volumes. This is critical. If you don't know what you're building for, how do you know what to build? It's really difficult because dealing with mostly the creative side of the house, the marketing people, we don't know what's going to be important to them in a week or a month or a year or 2 years. And in order to meet those needs, you've really got to buy stuff that's got such a wide variety of capabilities and functionalities, it can move with them as they change their needs. And that is a challenge. And once again, once you do all that, figure everything out, you define the future state. When we get there, I'll let you know, because we're not there yet. I'll tell you right now, we're not there yet, but we're trying. We're getting closer. The first one is define the opportunity. This is where data analysis becomes so important. We're very fortunate in our organization to have a Six Sigma black belt industrial engineer who is very good at distilling data. She found a way to go through all of our shop floor data and all of our procurement data to see everything that we're sending out, what are we sending out, and why are we sending it out. Just shop floor data, this is kind of a double-edged sword. You got to be careful of this. We have everybody on the shop floor has to account for their entire day in a time tracking system. So we know if they're running an offset press, are they doing the make ready for the press, are they doing the cleanup, the maintenance. But you've got to be careful of those hours. We're kind of a victim of our own rule by insisting that people account for 8 hours of their day. Are they dumping time into buckets that aren't real? So you've got to really be careful of what's going on within that data, understanding what they're driven to account for their whole day. So you've got to kind of take stuff with a little bit of a, not a healthy dose of skepticism, but keep an eye on what you're looking at. And then once again, look at the scale of the opportunity. What is out there? What are you spending your money on? Can you bring it in-house? Does it make sense to bring it in-house, or are you better off outsourcing? Should you outsource more? We don't know yet. We're trying to get those answers, and I'll show you what we've come up with so far. A few things we see. On the right hand of the slide is a little bit of the stuff we found just by looking at the data that we had in-house. We notice when you're running the iGen, 54% of that is spent running the iGen. The other 39 to 7% is more work that's required after that stuff is run. You've got to cut it, you've got to laminate it, you've got to bind it, you've got to spiral it, you've got to get it ready to be presented. So that one device has a big tail on it, which isn't a bad thing, but you need to understand end-to-end workflow to make sure you understand the entire process. We're looking at how the general buckets of the people running the machines is distributed between meetings, campaigns, training. I look at training, I talked about that healthy dose of skepticism. Our people have 20 plus years of tenure in the area. I mean, I'm not sure they're doing that much training anymore. So you make sure you talk to the management people, say, okay, we got to make sure that these numbers are real because we're making decisions based on these numbers. So we've got to understand them. And that's where the subject matter experts come into play because they can say, okay, well, here's what's really going on there. You've got to have that balance. It's not all about the numbers. The numbers get you started, but you need to make sure you're balancing what the numbers are saying versus what the experts are saying to make sure you get a complete picture. One of the big challenges, too, is print on demand versus inventory. We're so used to ordering stuff in mass quantities and just warehousing it, shelving it, and shipping it out when we need it, that something we shouldn't be doing? If we ordered it in smaller quantities, could we do it on our iGen 150? Could we do it on our other presses within the environment instead of ordering these mass quantities? Sometimes you're your own worst enemy. You've got to kind of be careful of that. Establish the mission. What was our objectives? What's internal versus external? Working with customers, predict future needs, and make recommendations. Do we continue as is? Is the status quo acceptable? In our case, we have offset presses that are over 20 years old. Envelope presses, letter presses, it's all very old equipment. Do we refresh it? Do we keep it the same way? Do we buy better capability? We have to find those answers out. Do we eliminate equipment and outsource more? Is that what we should be doing? Don't know yet. Don't think so. I think we have different opportunities there, but we have to make sure we have good reasons to do that. Once again, do you add capability internally? Can you lower cost? And can you maintain or improve customer service? Once again, we are an insurance company. We're not a print shop. So we need to make sure that we are supporting our business the best way possible. One of the results of the study, what are we outsourcing? A lot of inserts, brochures, folders, postcards. It's amazing how many postcards we do. But we have an old process to do that. We take it to a NetJet printer, and we print the address on the postcards. Should we be doing that? Is it better off using the iGen, putting everything on the 150, get personalized messaging, more surgical marketing techniques? A lot of times the people that are asking for these things don't understand what our in-house capabilities are, and we need to do a much better job of selling what we can do. I think probably everybody in here is probably guilty of that to a certain extent. How well do you market yourself internally within your organization? That's a real challenge. Determine the approach. Well, our approach was the 7-step process we're talking about right now. It's key that you understand the data, tools, and the expertise available to drive the analysis. Know what the data is telling you. For all practical purposes, all we're doing is going into data, pulling out massive data feeds, and running pivot charts on this stuff. Just pivoting back and forth to see what's the real story within the data. It's not anything that's really sophisticated. It's just a matter of using really Excel to its best power. You've got to spend a lot of time with the data and make sure it's accurate. What we found out too as we were going through these studies initially, we've done about 3 different deep dives. We've gone deeper and deeper and deeper into the study, that you've got to make sure that you're going to find out you don't know certain things you want to know. We have a bucket called non-chargeable. What does non-chargeable mean? It was almost 40% of our time was on non-chargeable items. We needed to understand what that non-chargeable data was, what those work tasks were, to make sure we got a full, complete picture of the entire operation. And we did. We did. And it's funny, when people see that we're keeping an eye on this stuff, the data gets more accurate because they want to make sure they're representing themselves in the best light possible too. And we owe that to them. These people are working hard, and they got a passion for their jobs. They want to make sure that we're taking care of those people, and that if you work together with them, they understand what you're trying to do and why you're doing it. You get a real nice collaboration there, and it becomes very powerful. And you get the right picture, which is the most important part of that. Define your current state. You've got to know everything you have on your floor, what its capacity is, what it's capable of, and what it can do, and what it can't do. But you need to know what everything can do and understand processes. We literally did a process flow on every piece of the organization, whether it was promotional mail, the iGen, the Sakurai press, the HomeJet. We did an end-to-end process flow, so we understood every step of the process through the way. Because what that does is, the biggest value to that is it makes you ask the right questions, the leading questions, the questions that get you, once again, to the right answers. Understand the complete project flow. What I showed you earlier about that iGen chart, how printing led to so much more work, it was really important to understand that complete flow. Job characteristics. In order to know what you're doing, this is what we needed to understand: who the customers were, how much we were ordering, the quantity, what the workflow was, what the job type was, and what the area was it was ending up in. Who was this for? Is it a consumer? Is it direct marketing? Where's that work ending up? And on the outsource side, we looked at who the customers were, how much we're doing, what are we paying for it, the quantity by job type, and we had to categorize the jobs and the reason it was being outsourced. In order to get that data as accurate as we could, we took a 3-month period of time where everything we did We quoted out to 3 different vendors, and we quoted it internally. So we had a good representation of internal versus external in the way that that turned out for us. This is a real challenge for us. When we first took the, combined the organizations together, we had a zeroing out cost methodology in the print shop, which meant that no matter what you did on a monthly basis, we had to zero out for everything from the space, electrical, lease payments, maintenance payments, labor charges, consumables, all had to zero out. So you could order something once and then 6 months later order the same thing, you'd be charged a different amount for it. That's a real good customer experience, needless to say. So we're in the process right now of really digging into that model and understanding what the best way is to cost that out. I mean, I have my own opinion. My opinion, which probably isn't very popular, is we have labor for 16 hours provided. I think we should drive every piece of equipment in that shop for 16 hours. Whatever is left, get it out the door. But you've got to make sure you're still being cost competitive. You've got to be careful with that approach. So there's good sides and bad sides to all of this, so you really need to look at that. The total cost of ownership is the real important thing to me. Anything we're writing a check for that's going outside of Progressive is, I think, what needs to be captured within the cost that goes back to the customer. But I also think if we've got equipment on the floor that's not being utilized, we're still paying for that. So should that customer pay a surcharge for stuff that we outsource? Try getting that one by. Good luck with that. But we're going to see what happens there. I think those are all the things you need to take into account when you're thinking through all of this stuff. Once again, we need to revise our current model. We know that. And we got to get rid of the zeroing out methodology there. Once again, the external versus internal analysis. We've talked about this quite a bit. What could we do internally? Do we have things, is there enough out there for us to bring in? We're seeing opportunities with laminating. A lot of the stuff that we have to send out because it requires aqueous coating. Should we get an aqueous coater? I'm looking at finishing equipment. If we had a booklet maker, if we had things that we could put at the tail end of our process, none of this stuff is terribly expensive. It really isn't in the grand scheme of things. Does it make sense to bring those capabilities in-house? Because keep in mind, one of the things that really bothered me when we first started talking about this was that our print shop said, we give people exactly what they want when they want it. We jump as high as they need us to jump. You gotta be kidding me, how can you plan that way? But I realized over the years that that's what provided us a strategic advantage. We could turn stuff around so quickly and so well that we became a real value to Progressive. And they prove it over and over again. I've swung completely 180 on that. I really respect and appreciate that now because it does provide a real competitive advantage to us in the marketplace. Stock versus demand, that is a real big one, I think, because we're so used to ordering massive quantities of things and just warehousing them and ultimately throwing them away versus ordering just what we need and can we do it internally. A little bit of the stuff we're coming up with, projects by area. 28% is corporate, 30% is commercial auto, personal lines agency. This gives you everything that we do by area so we know who the end customer is. So ultimately when we go to planning, we know who to go to. Say, okay, what do you got coming at us next? Okay, help us predict the future. Help us see where we're going to end up so we know what we need to provide for you. Offset press work, you guys are very familiar with this, I'm sure. The multi-2C is it's letterhead. But you see a lot of going on in here is a lot of carbonless paper. Okay, believe it or not, Progressive must love carbonless paper, okay? We found out by digging deeper into that, the best customer for our carbonless paper was ourselves, was our print orders. So, okay, we gotta be careful of this one here, okay? If we're our own best customer, what's that really telling you? Okay, can we do this electronically maybe? Okay, gotta be careful. But you've got to, when you dig into this stuff, this is the kind of things you find out. Well, if you're your own best customer, it's probably something you got to look at a little bit deeper. The iGens and the DM700, now it's iGen 150 and maybe a replacement for the 700. This is a real area of opportunity for us, I believe. I talked about the postcards we did earlier, where we literally take massive quantities of postcards and run through a NetJust system and put addresses on them. We started to challenge not even the designers. You got to get past the designers to the end customer, because they don't realize what we're able to do. We can personalize these things. We can say, okay, it's going to this person within this zip code. They are this old. We can really get surgical in our marketing approaches. And I don't think the end customer doesn't realize what we can do for them. So don't be afraid to re-engineer your processes, because in a lot of cases, that's where you're going to provide value. Don't underestimate what you got on the floor. I was talking to my bosses that are here today. So we owe it to ourselves to take a good look at our tools and see what we're not doing that we should be doing. We're scraping the surface on a lot of these tools, not using them nearly to the extent of their capabilities. Project customer needs. I think this one's fairly obvious. You got to know who you're working for, see what the volume is and the project types are that they're bringing to you, to see if the current project types are ongoing. Is it going to be here? That's the hardest thing. Do we buy something and all of a sudden it's something that's just sitting in the corner not being used? We've got a few of those now. We're going to put them out in Lake Erie and make them become part of the reef, but we're just not using these things anymore. You got to be careful of that, because it seems to be really exciting today, may be completely useless in 2 years. So that's why you've got to kind of go wide with your capabilities. Go wide with digital is a big example. Digital, variable data content, that type of ability, that's going to last for quite a while, I think. And see what's coming in. Basically, know what's coming at you and prepare for it. Define the future state. Do we need to get more equipment, different equipment? We have 20-some-year-old stuff. Do we get rid of it? Probably. What do we replace it with? Do we just make floor space? Can you start to take advantage of transactional and creative? I really look at the high-speed inkjet color printing today. The quality is getting so good on that now. I'm seeing where we can really start to take advantage of the synergies between the two areas and let them work together so that their capabilities can really complement each other and provide us a more powerful solution for Progressive. Know your staffing, and in our case, definitely refine your cost model. We're at step 7. We're trying to figure out what the future state is. But as you do that, you keep going back steps 4, 5, and 6 over and over again. You have no choice. But you just keep it. This isn't something you do one time. It's something you need to continue to do over and over again as you work yourself through your process, basically through your career. Always challenge yourself. Make sure you know what you're going to do. Print on demand versus inventory. What is the best thing to do for your company? What have we learned? Analysis is only as good as your data. You need people that understand the data. You cannot sit in your ivory tower, read data, and say, okay, here's the answer to that question, if you have no idea what's going on that floor. These people that are out there that run this equipment, that schedule this work, that in warehouse, everything that's going on out there, their expertise has got to be, vetted with the data so you get a good, complete picture of what's really going on out there. IT support. The more you get into data analysis, you're going to need the IT people, because it's what they do very well. They can slice and dice data no matter how you want to do it. Got to kind of be careful, because you can make data give you the answer that you want it to give. So you've got to be careful to make sure, okay, take a step back, make sure you're seeing the right things. Once again, you need the print shop expertise. Those are the people that dig into everything, and so they challenge the data. They really do challenge the data, and that's good, because if they're challenging the data, say, okay, let's look at the data. Why is the data saying this? And the challenge goes back to them. Make sure we're entering the data in a factual way, that it truly is correct. Analysis based on past and current work. Projecting into the future is more challenging. That's our biggest challenge today. What's going to be coming at us? And this is really big. You need business champions. The print shop cannot drive the print shop and its success. You need the marketing people, you need the training people, the corporate people, the IT people to champion you as a solution within your company. They need to recognize you for the value that you provide, and it's okay to remind them. They kind of take you for granted after a while, so a little reminder once in a while isn't a bad idea. Make sure that they know you're there for them. Own the brand. This is a real big one for us. Our creative organization literally owns the brand, the look and the feel, the font, the color, the progressive blue, the progressive orange, the progressive font size, everything that is progressive and gets put out into the world for our advertising campaigns or anything else. We own the brand. We are the brand police. It's very important. That's one of the key things we bring to the table, is that we are truly the owners of the brand. What's next? All the check marks are real good. It means they're done. We've got the press utilization done. We know the job type data. We know the workflow on the digital side and the creative side. The real challenge here now is taking all this data, all this information, and using it to project how our future is going to look. We have a somewhat of a good feel for it. We're seeing that our wide format printer, it's old, but we do a ton of stuff, cutouts. You got flow all over the place. You've got Flow Bron on all over, Facebook. So we're seeing a good possibility that we should be doing more of that type. So laminating, we send stuff out to be laminated all the time. We'll get a laminator, okay? A booklet maker, like I said. It's good to be able to take what you've got, your more current technology, and be able to leverage that with good finishing equipment. And the same thing, really, the aqueous coating is one that gets me all the time. I get that answer so many times. Why didn't you do this in-house? Well, it needed aqueous coating. Well, did it really? The designers, of course the designer's going to say it needs aqueous coating. That's their world. Okay, well, if that's the case, do you go get an aqueous coater? Okay? If we've got enough of that stuff we're sending out, maybe we should be bringing it back in-house. If it feels like something that's going to be here for quite a while, and that one does, let's see what we can do for it. Future considerations. Really what we brought was, are we doing the right work in the right place? Make sure that we are doing the work where it belongs. We started an organization called the Business Projects Team. They look at every project that comes in and look at everything we talked about and make sure that we're taking that work and putting it on the right format to get finished. Costing practices, once again, we got to know our chargeback models. We've got to figure that out because we're costing ourselves out of jobs artificially, and that makes no sense at all. That's just not smart. Once again, finishing equipment, determine our future direction. What do we need?